Are you frustrated with countless AI pitches that sound great in theory, but fail to deliver the goods? Learn how top investors at Martell Ventures cut through the hype, spot real winners, and avoid costly mistakes. This episode is for serious deal makers only. Here we go. Cooper, welcome to the show, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ryan. Huge fan of the show and the making billions world here. So happy to show a bunch of other people how you can do it with AI now too. So really excited to be here.
Yeah, and I'm excited to have you. Obviously, I love Dan and I love Martell Ventures and the things that you've done. And we've been very fortunate to be in, I think we're number 3 or 4 in the world for private equity shows and top 10 in venture capital. So we've been very fortunate, and it's all because of amazing guests like you. So let's jump right into it, man. So everyone thinks that raising capital is really about pitching investors, but from your experience on just running Martell Ventures with Dan, what's the biggest myth about raising capital that founders need to unlearn immediately?
Yeah, I mean, I'll speak specifically in the AI context because that's what we've been living in. And nowhere have I ever seen somewhere like in the AI space where the technology now lets basically anybody create whatever the heck they want. And there's pros and cons with that. I mean, there's a lot of amazing companies that are going on to raise tons of money. There's a lot of amazing companies that are doing insane numbers. But there's also a ton of other founders that are just using AI to build stuff because it's now viable with AI. And a lot of them, in my experience, will kind of really lose sight of who is this product or what is this tool actually solving and what's the problem that's being addressed with it. And the amount of demos I've seen even in the last 3, 4, 5 months from founders where there's a really cool new feature that they're able to put together. But 2 weeks later, I mean, I've got probably like 10 or 11 stories of just companies this year I've seen where they'll pitch me, seems cool on the surface, and then 3 weeks later, the OpenAI or Anthropic or name big AI company down in Silicon Valley releases a feature, and all of a sudden they're just gobbled up and their company's irrelevant. So I think the biggest thing right now is founders are just getting really married to like what AI can do as opposed to what the actual problem they're trying to solve is. And if you really just hyper focus in on that, it also is nice from an investor's perspective or somebody who's looking to help support these founders. Because if you know what the problem is, you can actually, everything else is a byproduct of that. So I think that's probably the biggest thing right now is just getting too swept up in the tech, losing sight of the actual problem that's being addressed.
You know, you're spot on. I've been fortunate enough to be pitched as well. And the ones that nail it and versus those that maybe struggle to, here's the thing, and I'd love to get your take on it, Cooper. Some people, they get so excited, like you mentioned, they're so excited about this product they've built or are going to build. It could be real estate, it could be AI tech or something in between. And they go through and talk about, we'll say real estate. Yeah, we got the best countertops and the shiniest kitchen sinks or whatever it is that they're pitching. And they lose sight to say, I mean, that's good. Yes, have a good product. Obviously, that's given. But it's we're not buying a condo or subscribing to this AI technology. We're buying a security that those assets will drive the value of. And so missing the mark of saying, hey, here's the product. Like, obviously, you got to talk about it. But overemphasizing when you're raising on how great your product is might be missing the other half or the other side of that coin, which is to say, hey, I'm asking these guys to put money and I'm giving them a security, right? A stock in my business or whatever it might be. Let's talk about that. And so a lot of that, when you just focus on product and you miss talking about the problem you're solving, the security that they're getting. And so when it's too product centric, I find a lot of people start to stumble when investors ask non-product questions. Have you saw anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's back to the whole thing. I mean, it's funny. My mom used to be an architect, or still is an architect, interior designer, and half of her battles with clients is always getting them to envision the space that she's putting together and building. Like most people say they have really good imaginations. They don't really. So you kind of have to spell it out as clean and simple and neat as possible, especially if you're a founder, because at the end of the day, if you can't articulate how, especially if you can't articulate how you're going to get a return or how you're going to drive value or where the underlying benefit of the company you're actually putting together is, it's very difficult if you're just product centric and just going too much down that side for people to actually envision how this is going to look 2, 3, 4 years from now. And I think if you can just spell it out nice and clean to be like, hey, here's the exact problem. Here's how our tool solves this problem, different from how maybe it's been able to be done in the past, or maybe different from how people are currently doing it right now. Or here's how it's more unique, and whatever your unique way of doing it is, this is why you should come support me. And here's the outcome we're shooting for in the future, whatever your growth multiple or exit target looks like, is just a better way of presenting it rather than going, hey, you know what? New GPT rollout just came. Look at this cool, like now we can actually do X, Y, Z. It's like fascinating, but it's also hard for people that don't understand the underlying technology to really get a grasp on, especially in the AI space, because it's growing so fast and it's moving so quickly that's really easy if you're not staring at it every day to get left behind, which is just kind of like also that's why we really focus on very problem heavy solving companies as opposed to really cool tech heavy companies, because it's also easier for us to digest. Like we're not even though we might say we're the smartest people in the room, at the end of the day, we're also just trying to really find what's the easiest, simple 1 + 1 = 2 solutions that we can really wrap our heads around. And if I can find out in the first 30 seconds who a customer is, what the problem they're solving is, just way easier for everyone to strive towards a desirable outcome.
And finding out what they have, it makes me wonder, could you walk us through the Martell method as it relates to the exact evaluation framework that you guys go through? Just when you see a new AI startup pitch, what are those first 3 things that you look for?
Yeah, I mean, for us, like we're pretty specific. So the number one thing for us is we want to make sure that there's customer alignment. So we know what we know, and that is small, medium-sized businesses. We know AI can help solve a problem for them, and we need to see some level of like traction without kind of getting caught up in a whole bunch of vanity metrics, which there's a lot of in the AI space. So for us, really what that kind of looks like is we want to see a company that is coming in and disrupting, or at least trying to solve a very definable problem. And like we've got a whole bunch of frameworks, if you want, we can dive into in terms of like what that actually looks like in terms of the problems. Second thing is they got to have some sort of traction. So we're not looking for companies that are already blowing past Series A, going off for crazy other rounds. Like for us, it's any range of company kind of doing anywhere from like $500 to $3 million a year in annual revenues. So we're kind of just looking to see that there is a little bit of validation here. And then the third thing is we're looking for people that, again, can really clearly articulate how this product is adding value to the customers that they're looking for. If they get caught up too much in like, hey, here's how, if they start talking too much about what models they're using or how efficient everything is from a back end, or like just the different token usage and just getting way too nerdy into the tech on it, it's kind of a bit of a signal that there might be a little bit of a missing gap somewhere. So those are kind of the things that we look for at a high level before we dive deeper.
Yeah, it sounds like you're talking to the engineers behind it. So they're like, look at what I built. They're like, cool, but does the market want it? Right. So
exactly.
That's really good. I know you talked about it, but for the benefit of the people listening around the world, you said, I remember when we were speaking offline, that you could tell in about the first 5 seconds that there's a little bit of something that kind of is I don't want to say red flag, but maybe a green flag or an orange flag. What is it that first 5 seconds is that first thing that you really can pick up on if you're onto something or if the founder's onto something? What is that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of them. I think one of the really clear, definable ones that we look for as well is just how painful would it be? Well, two, how much is somebody going to use a product, and how painful is it if you take it away from them? So if someone's coming to me with a product or an idea or some sort of concept, and it's something that they're going to check in on once a month, and they might use it, they might not use it, but like, hey, it's going to be there living in the background. Kind of hard to really get on board with that being a tool that I can see a lot of stickiness with, especially when things are moving so quickly. Someone's just going to come out with something either a little bit cheaper, a little bit faster, a little bit more in your face, and just take them over. So that's a big one, is like how frequently someone's going to use it. And then the second one is just how painful is it? Like if I can see myself, like if it's a huge problem such as like recruiting or accounts receivable or something where it's like it's a daily kind of in your face problem that someone in an organization or a business is facing, and they're going to be like, hey, you know what, we just installed it, we're using it, now if you take it away from them, there's like a lot of pain and just yucky feeling on that. That's a really big way that we can kind of look to assess. And there's some like funnier ones as well that we use, but those are kind of like two of the easiest, biggest ones.
Brilliant. This year, I read Dan's book, Buy Back Your Time. And what I've learned is Dan's known for systematizing success. How did you and the Martell Ventures team build a repeatable system for filtering through hundreds, if not thousands, of AI deals? Yeah,
I mean, it's kind of funny, but one of the easiest ways is you can kind of just ask ChatGPT, which is, I know not like the best answer in the world, but like there's this whole concept that people in the AI world use called like master prompts and system prompts. So essentially what you do is take whatever your current process is now, ask ChatGPT, Claude, whatever you want to use. You can use Google, you can use Grok, doesn't really matter. Start there and just say, hey, I want you to help me make my processes more efficient for XYZ fund. Here's what we're doing. Ask me as many questions as possible, help build a master prompt about how my organization runs. And you go, cool, set aside like 2 hours because you're going to get legitimately 100 questions from the AI, and you like kind of lock yourself in a quiet room because you will look a little insane just talking to your also approach it. There's a bunch of these tools out there. My favorite is called Super Whisper. We don't have any affiliation with them. It's just a really good tool, and I wish I had some affiliation with them. So if the founder's listening, I'd love to get in touch. But there's a number of these tools that will let you talk to, basically you can use voice to text essentially, and way better than dictation, way better than the out of the box ChatGPT features. And yeah, you just sit down, answer the questions, go into as much detail as possible, leave no stone unturned. And what you'll end up with is essentially this master document that outlines your entire operational process head to toe. And you go, bang, okay, where's my inefficiencies? Where am I wasting a bunch of time? Where am I maybe spending? Where could I automate processes that are currently right now being done manually? And each person is going to be a little bit different. So like for us, we essentially have it where we have new inbound applicants come in. We have a bunch of prompts that essentially evaluate each one of those candidates and applications based off of like a pretty detailed, super in-depth grading rubric of how we assess and how we want to view deals. It goes through that initial pass through. All the ones that kind of show through as promising then go on to like a quick manual review just to do a quick double check. So instead of us filtering through 100 applications a day, we're filtering through 5 to 10. So it's a little bit easier to kind of digest. Then once we kind of move them through, basically we just slide them across in our CRM. That then fires off a bunch of other automations to schedule in the meeting, have that person basically join in on a quick demo call, request all the information that we need to see from them. Basically, essentially automates the entire process of like managing that founder, so to speak. So that way, all I need to do is take 10 minutes out of my day to assess and evaluate all the highest probability deals we should be looking at, hop on calls with the ones that we do want to talk to. And then we have a bunch of prompts on the backside that actually take the transcript from the calls we have with the founders, runs them through a whole series of additional prompts and other kind of AI processes to, again, extract more information from them to see, okay, does this kind of fit the objectives that we're looking for, matches it through to see if there's any like conflicts, goes through the entire grading process again in more detail. And at the end of it, kind of grades it, scores it, posts it across all the channels where everybody who's involved that needs to make a decision can see it to make a decision, and then preps all of our diligence docs, all the diligence process, everything else on the back end. So it's a pretty involved deal, but all kind of starts, if anyone wants to do it at home, all you need to do is, like I said before, ask ChatGPT, go in depth, give it the information, run through the process, plug the holes. And before you know it, like our entire process now maybe takes 10, 15 minutes with just a little bit of formatting on some of the social media. There's not social media, on some of like the Slack or internal messaging posts, but it's pretty remarkable. And every time I almost do it once a month just to be like, how can I make this even better? And like, you'll find the upper limits pretty quickly of like where it's good or where it's not good. And then you can kind of like dial it back or go deeper if you want. But I can say this with confidence, at the start of the year, what used to take probably 3 to 4 hours is now taking probably 20 to 30 minutes, and just buying back a crazy amount of time.
Yeah, you certainly did that. Do you have because a big part of this is doing due diligence. When you're at this phase, you're doing that. Do you guys have an in-house thing, or do you have any AIDD support? Are there any that you personally like?
For the companies that we deal with, most of the DD is kind of done in-house just based off the size of the companies. They don't have the amount of information that we need to kind of like go through a huge due diligence process. I mean, we definitely have our checklists and our markers and everything else to make sure that we're making good decisions, that founders are making good decisions, so that nobody ends up with a bad deal. So, I mean, for us internally, we have a bunch of kind of like our own internal due diligence that we run on all these to make sure that we're making good decisions and that the founder's making a good decision. I mean, we don't get enough information from these companies to fully run it through a much more crazy diligence process. But if we were, there is one tool I've seen called Termina, which is pretty wicked. Again, no affiliation on our end from it, just a cool tool that we've come across that, yeah, definitely if you are doing more involved diligence, is definitely worth a look.
Yeah. Well, hopefully everyone's involved in due diligence who listens to this show. It means something's going horribly right. So yeah, the power of AI, and wow, you just blew my mind, man. So this is what we're talking about. The new age of venture capital is, a lot of it is not just cutting checks to AI. It obviously is that. What we're saying is also using AI to make better decisions, both from risk management, covering your downside, also covering your upside. And so hopefully with the power of AI, and as it matures, that this will also affect investors as well, man. I absolutely love it. What would you say is one red flag that kills an AI deal instantly, no matter how good it looks on the surface? What's one red flag that you see?
Yeah, I mean, for us, there's kind of like the usual suspects. For us, though, one of the big ones is given who Dan is and kind of his name being front and forward on our fund, one of the biggest ones for us is affiliation risk. So we'll purposely turn away deals if we know that there's risk with the founder who's involved. Even if it's a fantastic deal, it makes a ton of sense. But if the affiliation risk goes like, hey, this could actually end up hurting the brand of Dan at a high level, typically what we're going to do is kind of look to move away from those. Like, so for us, things are maybe a little bit different than some other funds or firms out there where maybe like the social facing element isn't as prevalent. But for us, that's like usually pretty much one of the biggest ones. I mean, one that's a bit more general though, and this is for anybody that's looking at AI, is founders that brag about how easy building their products are. I can't tell you how many times I've been talking with a founder. And again, this is back to just because you can build something with AI doesn't mean you should. But people now, anybody and everybody that can articulate correctly what they want a product to look like can use tools such as Replit or Claude Code to build products now. And I've had founders a number of times that'll come with like pretty decent traction, but they'll start bragging right off the bat that a product only took them 2 weeks or 1 weekend to put together. And I mean, like, man, unless you are the industry expert with the biggest audience, or you are just the most knowledgeable, best operator on the planet, usually if someone's bragging about how quickly they can build something, it's a bit of a signal that it's not very defensible in the long run. And also, why would we invest in that person if there's somebody that might have more defensibility involved in it? So for us, those are kind of like two really easy ones that we kind of look at that I go, doesn't quite sit right if they're bragging about how quickly something came to be.
Yeah, that's the thing they miss. I remember the early days. My first love was venture capital and angel investing. And one of the things that we always found to be an extreme good or a green flag is what you talked about before AI. It was, I remember there was a deal that we loved, and they put in, get a load of this, they put in 10 years. They had like 60 patents. Instantly, exactly what you're talking about. Instantly, we're like, okay, so for somebody to become a competitor, we're already 10 years ahead of them. There's no catching these guys. It's a brilliant strategy. So if you're like, hey, I could pop up this app in by the afternoon, you're like, so then your competitors probably could too, and I'm going to lose a lot of money. So I could see why you're looking at that to say, actually, if it's quite easy to build, that might not be great. We're looking for things that have some defensibility. I absolutely love it, and I'm so glad you brought that up. Now, with that said, let's talk about the flip side. What's a green flag that makes you and your team lean in and just say, we got to fund this guy?
Yeah. So for us, I mean, back to the whole thing about AI, it's kind of taken non-technical people and turned them very tech-enabled now, which means people that like the people who are going to succeed in the businesses who are going to succeed and the founders that are going to really win in the next 3 to 5 years are the ones that just have such deep domain expertise in whatever solution they're trying to solve is. Like, I mean, from our perspective, I would way rather go fund or work with the guy who's worked in construction for 35 years, knows every pain point down to like the nose, is super well connected in the space, and just you tell him about a process that you can point to like 15 reasons why it is, or you point him in a project, he'll say the 10 reasons it will work, the 10 reasons it won't. That guy is going to be able to build a product that solves a problem for that ICP or that customer so much better than some kid who is just understands how like all this product and how all this technology works. Like, so really deep understanding and like deep domain knowledge. I mean, and what we kind of call is like founder market fit. So it's like you want to have product market fit, but if you can have founder market fit, especially with AI, you can do a lot of damage real quick. That's kind of like the biggest green flag for us is just like, because if you know it and you know how big the pain is, guaranteed there's other people that have it too. And if you can help solve it and it isn't already being done at a wide enough scale yet, let's rock and roll.
Yeah. So would you say then, just carrying on that logic, at Martell Ventures, are you guys more focused on product excellence, or how does the founder story come into play as you guys look at making decisions to fund or not fund?
Yeah, I mean, product definitely factors in. However, right now, I mean, it's more important it's less of an important thing because you can get good products so easily now. Like, kind of gone are the days where you need to go raise a bunch of money, hire a crazy talented tech team, build out the product, then go to market. What impresses the living crap out of us is somebody who can actually go validate a problem first, go sell it to someone, come back to us and say, hey, you know what? I felt this pain myself. My friends felt this pain. I put this really janky duct tape and bubblegum solution together, but it does this specific thing for this person, and it's an expensive problem. I'd like to kind of go on forward with this. To us, that's like the cherry on top almost when we're looking and assessing deals, because if someone's going to go out of their way to use these new tools that are available or kind of use AI to solve problems that otherwise weren't viable from a logistical perspective before, that, because again, like AI has been able to make a bunch of old boring problems sexy again all of a sudden, because there's things out there that you would have never built technology for. You would have never gone and found a software solution to solve it just because the cost would have been insane. The return wasn't as high. But people are now going and saying like, hey, actually that thing that was too expensive and didn't make any sense to go do, I can go do it now. And as it turns out, there's a ton of people that have that problem and pain point. So let's go sell it to them. And that to us is kind of like one of the coolest things is people that go scratch their own itch, understand it, come to us and say, hey, you know what? This just sucks so bad for me. Went and solved it. Want to help go get this in front of more people? We're like, hell yeah, let's rock and roll.
Yeah. The info products and coaching and all that stuff online. I always fantasize with AI is how cool would it be if you can actually schedule a phone call with an AI coach who's trained on whatever methods, raising capital, startups, whatever, losing weight. It could be literally anything. How cool would it be to just have a scheduled phone call with an accountability coach? And it's just because we've got SDR dialer, we got a lot of these technologies that are circling. And I always thought that would be right. Like to build software around that makes no sense. But now it can pop up so fast. Heck, I'm a finance guy and we could probably build something like that. But how cool is the market? It's turning absolutely jaw dropping. So I love it. And you guys are right at the forefront for funding that. So let's peel this back another layer. Can you share an example of a deal that you passed on later that just it validated your instincts, and then maybe one that you funded that proved you were right?
Yeah, so I won't use the name of the company that we passed on, but it's kind of back to what I was mentioning before, which is like focusing on technology over actual core problem solving. So there's this one company that loved the founder, phenomenal guy, like would have backed him, still would like to find a way to work with him. But he built a solution that basically kind of helped, essentially used AI to get ahead of every phone call that you would receive, and then screened it, saw if it was spam, worthy of talking to, and like beforehand would pass it through. So if you're getting a call, but like to basically sell you a cruise in Nigeria next summer for $10,000, it'll just have AI take that call, and then you don't actually ever see the phone ring. So that way it never actually registers. Pretty cool thing because it also kind of protected you from spam registrars and stuff because you're technically never answering the phone. We were like, hey, this is awesome. And then I remember 3 weeks after we kind of started chatting with him, a new update comes out from Apple where that's like just baked into a new software update. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So there's unfortunately no more company anymore because you're not going to go compete against Apple in that respect. There's also one other one I can think of. There was a company that before kind of in like AI moved so quickly, but kind of back a few months ago, there used to be this big concept around how you would prepare your data. So how did you get your data ready for an LLM to use essentially? So seems like a pretty straightforward thing, but if you don't have the right tags or if it's not structured properly, AI had a hard time reading it. There's this one company that basically said, hey, we actually built a whole system that will take all your messy data, turn it into clean AI visible data. And then that way you can get better uses out of it with AI. And we're like, sweet, this is perfect. And then quite literally we ended up not doing the deal. And then I remember seeing about a month afterwards, Anthropic, who created Claude and all that, came out with an update that basically just said, yeah, it doesn't really matter what your data looks like. AI can read it. And I was like, oh, okay. So yeah, that even if we had done that, there's just, you're now just a core function of a larger product. So there's a ton more of them. Those are just two that kind of like stick out and remember at the top of my mind. Yeah,
you dodged that bullet. What about ones that you had an instinct to, because a lot, depending on how early, if you're seed or pre-seed, it's a lot instinct. But what about those that you did fund and then later on you're like, I knew this was going to be good. You have any of those?
Yeah. So this one might be a little bit cheating because it was kind of like a little internal incubated skunkworks project, but we had basically solved one of our own itches. So the company is called, this one I will share the name on because we did do the deal. It's called Get Revio, but essentially we were having a really hard time managing kind of social media as a sales channel, whereas kind of just an organized sales channel. Lots of reasons. If you've ever been in your inbox, it's linear. Multiple people get in there, it gets messy really quickly. And AI is really good at helping to clean all that up, but also give insights, pull information from who you're actually talking to, predict what you should actually say to people in order to kind of help get them to move along in a sales process. So we actually had a guy on the team, his name is Vive. He was building out the product for us. It was kind of, again, back to scratching your own itch. It was scratching our own itch. It was a problem we knew. And then, yeah, surprise, surprise, we ended up kind of bringing that into Martell Ventures, and now he's off and crushing it. So it's a phenomenal tool. I mean, if anybody ever is trying to use social media, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, everything to try and grow as a sales channel, it's really hard unless you're using something like that. So for us, that was one where we knew it was a problem. We knew it needed to be solved. Lo and behold, can't really go wrong when you start kind of coming at things with that sort of frame. So that was like a little bit of one because it was like an internal skunkworks project, but it's often flying right now. So we're super happy with that one.
Well, we need to talk about that because that's definitely an issue that I have. I mean, I do get a lot of offers to get 1 million followers in 30 days with no bots. So I was like, really? I think you're full of crap. But working through that, all these offers and the social media, and often in the industry that I'm in, and well, that you and I are in, I always talk about the best place to start is what I call quadruple F: friends, family, fools, and followers. It used to be triple F, but in this day, there's a lot of followers. And managing that social media and building rapport, a lot of people put money and time and effort and their heart into growing a following, and then they get a message, and then they get a lot of messages, and what do I do, right? And so you've built this follower base that you can't monetize. So I can certainly see, just from my personal experience, and I can imagine the millions of people around the world that would benefit from saying, hey, you put a lot of time and investment into this. How about you get the value that you intended to get in the first place? We have a tool for that. So I love it, man. Hitting the easy button. I love it. So if a founder wants to build an AI company that actually gets funded, from your experience, what must be in place beyond just the tech itself?
Yeah, beyond just the tech, I mean, I think the biggest thing is they need to actually be building AI first. So there's still a lot of founders I notice out there right now that are building software products that are made better with AI. So it's not kind of a through and through full on AI company, if that makes sense. So like I've even seen this where I'll talk with founders and their head of development doesn't like to use Claude Code or doesn't like to use Cursor or any of these AI development tools. Bit of a flag if you're building an AI tool and you're not using AI to help build the process. So make sure that if you're building an AI company, you're actually building the whole stack with AI. That's kind of giving us kind of on the tech side, but it's also just good future proofing because, yeah, I mean, you want to be, these companies that can be built so lean and mean. If you're not taking every advantage, it's a bit of a flag. The other thing is back to what we've already kind of spoken about a little bit, but I'll just reiterate it here maybe a little bit differently. But you need to make sure that your product has a very clear use case that you can quantify. So thinking at it almost less of like, hey, here's what we're able to do, here's how it provides value, but thinking of it more like, hey, here's the repeatable process every single day that people are doing. Here is how we can use our tool to basically remove those tasks. Like a good example is we bought another company in our portfolio. It's called Atlas. It does a bunch of like basically does a bunch of like AI dialing. So anytime a lead form gets filled out, an AI basically voice agent will do all the qualification. Very clear how that use case is definable. And I can take one look at that and a customer can take one look at that and be like, oh yeah, great. So you're saying my receptionist now doesn't have to waste their time on 30 of these random calls a day. They can actually do more important tasks. 2 thumbs up. And then the third one is just, again, kind of another thing we've already spoken about a little bit, but it needs to be sticky. So you need to find products that people are actually going to keep and want to keep coming back for. So ideally, it's an everyday workflow support tool. It's a back-end kind of like system of record or tool that essentially just cleans up and manages a lot of processes that someone's doing very manually. Things that people, again, back to what we already spoke about a little bit, but just if it hurts to take it away, that's the sign that you've got something that's really going to work here. If you just have kind of a bit of like a tech magic trick, you might want to reevaluate how durable your product is. So those are kind of the 3 big things that I would kind of put out there.
Brilliant, man. And with that, I'm curious, I have an add-on question for you. So where do most, since you focus on AI and dealing with AI founders, where would you say most AI founders waste their time when pitching investors? And maybe follow up with some advice on how to redirect that energy.
Yeah, I mean, I'll actually kind of take a bit of a page out of your book here. I mean, I think the one phrase that you use is always like the bluff. So it's like most founders, I still know, I was on a pitch earlier today, literally did not get to the point. Like the biggest thing that I think founders can do is just get to the numbers right away, get to the meat and potatoes, skip everything else, and just tell me what the deal is before you jump in everything else. Like, I don't know why I need to sit around and hear a life story, a product development, that like just all of it is, it's cool. We will get there, but within 2 minutes, I'll be able to determine if a deal is worth going on or not if we just kind of get to like the most important information right off the bat. So I'll kind of take a page out of the Making Billions playbook here and use some terminology people might see, but that'd be my biggest thing.
Well, thank you. Your flattery will get you everywhere. Yeah, the bottom line up front, the bluff. So for the benefit of those listening, I'll go through it. Here's the science behind it. Let's talk about that because while that sounds good, bottom line, let me give framework. We were chatting offline to be like, we got to help people execute. And so the bottom line up front is seriously the first thing out of my mouth. It's on the title page, but we say it, and this is from the context of a fund manager raising money and say, we're X fund. We invest in Y assets in Z sector. We're raising X amount of money. and we're targeting a Y return for our investors. That's it. So right out of the gates, I love that you brought this up, Cooper, because right out of the gates, now an investor's like, cool, I know who you are, what you invest in, where you invest, how much you're going to ask for, and what kind of return should I decide to join you on this 10-year journey or however long the fund's a long one. And now the rest of the pitch is like, they're locked in. They're like, hey, yep, I know who you are, what you do, where you do it. Now the rest of the pitch is just adding context to those first 5 or 10 seconds on the bluff. Could you imagine missing all of that? And you just get into, and it's this, and we tried that, and we had this story, and the investor's like, what the hell is happening right now? And so now you're able to really support a lot of the founders in their quest and the investors as well by just saying like, here, bottom line up front, this is who we are, this is how much we need, here's what you can expect to get should we be successful, and then let me add context. So I absolutely love that. Thank you for the bluff. Thanks for the shout out. So
no worries.
And so for investors listening, what's the biggest mistake that they make when evaluating AI startups that just causes them to get roasted?
Yeah, I think it's getting wrapped up in magic tricks. So this is again, I'll just speak to the AI stuff because this is where my life has been the last number of months. But the biggest mistake I see people making is they'll get pitched by a founder, charismatic, all the energy in the world. They build something that is cool. Like I'm not going to say it's not, like I'm not going to say some of this technology being built right now isn't really cool. The trouble is that it's so cool because, again, you can build things that were never feasible before. So that way it's easy to get wrapped up in kind of this vortex of irrationality where you can kind of start to play like whack-a-mole with what's the solution for this cool tech. And you're just like, oh, hey, like it's a little bit of smoke and mirrors. And I think the biggest thing right now is founders just get really caught up with a super charismatic founder and a really cool tech or product demo that doesn't actually have any substantial benefit to an end customer. So that's probably the biggest thing. And I'd say a byproduct of that is if you're going to be investing or looking at AI companies, at least try and stay up to date with what kind of the status quo in the moment is with AI. Because and this is actually something that we've been coming across more and more recently. There's a lot of founders making claims of what this tech can do. But if you know what the state of the union is, it's actually not feasible for some of these products to be at the level they're talking about now. And so that's a really big one. Like if you don't know what the tech is actually capable of, you'll run the risk of getting overly impressed by kind of a walled garden scenario. And that's a quick way to get burned as well. So be in the know and just kind of have your BS radar going off, because if it looks too good to be true, it probably is. So those are the two biggest things.
I love that, man. And I'd love to carry on that logic. So for those investors, what would you say are, let's say, 3 questions they should always ask before writing a check to an AI company?
3 that I would ask. One would just be actually see if you can talk to some of the customers that are using the product right now. That is a huge one because a founder can tell you as much as they want to, but a customer will actually tell you how they're currently using it right now. And are they using the thing? Are they using the cool magic trick portion that they showed you, or are they using it for some other reason? Or are they not using it at all and they actually turned away? Big one right there. Another question that I would say is, just get a full breakdown of kind of everything that they are using. I mean, there's a bit of a running joke in the AI space right now that every product is just a ChatGPT wrapper. And like, there's shreds of truth in that, but because at the end of the day, there's no reason not to use ChatGPT's APIs because they're phenomenal, but there's levels to it. Like some companies are quite literally just a couple degrees away from ChatGPT. So you want to really see like, what is the tech stack that you're using? And is there anything somewhat proprietary or somewhat unique in how they've positioned their product around OpenAI or Anthropic's APIs? That's a really big one. And then this one I'd say is a bit split, but really understand and make sure that either they're kind of what I mentioned before, like a massive subject matter expert on the problem they're trying to solve. So you know that regardless if they're capable of doing it, if you can find a tech talent to put in there to help them solve the problem they know, cool beans. Or make sure that if they are a technical founder, that they actually know what they're talking about and they're not just kind of coming to you as some vibe coding tech bro that threw together a bunch of like Zapier or N8N automations. Because there's a lot of that out there. And there's even tools that I've seen nowadays where you can essentially take Zapier or N8N or make.com workflow and put a front-end user experience on top of it. So you can actually like at this point it's getting pretty murky what like is and isn't a product. So really make sure that if you're investing in something, it's not just a couple webhooks thrown together, because that can get you hurt pretty quick.
Yeah, back to the magic trick thing that you talked about, the sleight of hand, look over here or whatever. And, one thing I remember the first time you and I met, and you talked a lot, like you have this domain expertise. And one of the things that really got me thinking, and I learned this from you, was, is there a question that you tend to ask as you're trying to make a decision and do right at Martell Ventures, is to say, does this get better with AI, or will this get wiped out as AI, like the big one, Anthropic and Grok and these big models that most people are familiar with now? Is it, if it's a feature that uses it and then say ChatGPT added to that feature, now you're irrelevant? So I absolutely love it. And I didn't want to lose that. I didn't want to lose your brilliance that you do. And that's something to really think about. And when I heard it, I was like, how is this not more obvious? Of course. So it's absolutely brilliant, man. And so making sure that this isn't just a feature that could get wiped out as, say, ChatGPT. They added agents and additional features. So that wrapper of the models, there's a lot of things. And I can see why you might be a little skeptical and maybe take your time or sharpen your pencil a little extra sharp on due diligence. I think that's really important to be able to do that, to say, could this thing get wiped out? Like, is this a feature that Grok or ChatGPT could add? If so, may not be for us. Anything you can add to that?
Yeah, there's actually a framework we use to kind of like evaluate and kind of go down that pathway a little bit more. So, I mean, like, because this kind of actually happened at my previous startup. It wasn't the reason why the startup wasn't successful, but it was definitely one thing that we had on our mind. Was my previous startup was an AI grant writing business or an AI grant writing startup. And one of the things for us is, like, back in the prehistoric times of AI, chain of thought and context wasn't really a thing. So for anybody that doesn't understand AI a ton, basically you used to be able to ask a singular question and get a response based off that text block that you submitted. But if you had, like, say 10 questions chained together, it used to be very difficult to get a response to the question one that you used to ask. That's no longer a problem. And thank goodness, because it was really annoying when AI first kind of came out and all these chatbots came out. So what we did, you can imagine for grants, so that's pretty important because they're like massive documents that you have to put all this information in. And I remember literally one day, me and my other co-founders, we were just arguing because it was such a big annoyance for us. And it was literally stalling how many applications we could sell because we had to build all this context in every single document that we put together. And I remember, like, one of my co-founders just said, like, there's no point in us building this because in 6 months, it's going to be a stand. Like, there's no way OpenAI, Anthropic, any of these other companies aren't already tackling this. So us putting any of our resources on it is pointless because it's just going to come out. And so the framework that we kind of use now at Ventures to really evaluate this is, if you take everything else out of play, is the core functionality of the product the founder's building, does it get better if the models get better? So, like, a good example would be, say, voice AI, for instance. I don't necessarily think that OpenAI is going to have a feature that allows you to put a context, basically put a whole database of contacts into it, send out messages, and off it goes. And it's going to just go dial, call, and message all of them. What I do think, though, is that you're going to be able to use that model, and the voice agent on the other side is going to get tremendously better every single time there's a new update. So it's like the core functionality isn't really at risk, but the underlying engine, as it improves, the business improves. And so we really look for opportunities like that. And if it feels like this is something that could become a part of your ChatGPT $20 subscription 3 months from now, that's where we kind of draw the line.
Brilliant. My final question for you, brother. So you sat in Martell Ventures with Dan for a while now, been able to see what works at scale. What's one inside lesson that you've learned from Dan and this experience that listeners can apply immediately?
I think the biggest one is just attack problems, and you're probably not working as fast as you think you are. I mean, this might be a little bit of a wake-up call because, I mean, it's definitely a bit of a culture shock for anybody new that joins our team, but the speed and pace in which we operate, and that kind of like Dan operates all of his companies at, is just monumental compared to what I think most people really realize. And I think everybody, if you're thinking about it right now, your upper limit of what you think working hard is probably 40% of the capacity of what you're able to do. And an easy framework to kind of instill with your team or even within yourself is, if you're looking at a task list of everything that needs to get done this week, really push whoever's responsible for that outcome to see how come the thing that's earmarked for Friday can't be done on Wednesday. And what you'll really find is that most people are just putting it off because they want to, not because they actually have to. And if you start kind of looking at everything you need to get done through that lens, whether that's in a diligence process, like, I mean, even for us, like, we'll attach deadlines to the founder they're working with to get us documentation. Like, we'll set deadlines for everything, but it's just make sure that you set deadlines, challenge how come they can't be done quicker, and then really work to just make sure you're attacking whatever it is that you're working on with the speed and intensity you want to execute and operate at. Now, full disclosure, that's not for people who want to go do big, amazing things. If you don't want to go do big, amazing things, keep doing what you're doing. But if you want to go accomplish really big things, which I think everybody listening to a podcast talking about how to make billions probably is, then I would assume, just kind of take that mental check and just follow up with your team and push them to figure out why stuff can't be done 2 days sooner than when they say it's going to be done by.
Brilliant, man. So before we wrap things up, where can people go to find out more information, or if they want to contact you just to learn a little bit more, where would you send them?
Probably the two easiest ways are you can either shoot me a message on Instagram, or if you want to go connect with me on LinkedIn, I'm pretty easy to find there, just Cooper Simson on LinkedIn. Or if you want to just fire me off an email even, it's just cooper@danmartell.com. And yeah, those are probably the easiest ways to get a hold of me.
Brilliant, man. So just to summarize everything that we talked about, use AI to work faster. You can work at godlike speeds, apparently, especially at the Martell Ventures. Also, avoid products that can get wiped out with AI updates on those larger models. And finally, the bluff. Get to the point. Get to the bottom line up front. You do these things and you too will be well on your way in your pursuit of making billions.